What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson, and the New York Giants have finally addressed their punt return needs, signing a former All-Pro in Gunner Olszewski. Interesting name, a little bit difficult to say there, definitely difficult to read, but this is a player that's hopefully going to bring some stability to the New York Giants special teams unit. Of course, last week, Washington Commanders game, the Giants got their second win of the season, but they had two costly plays on special teams. Well, they muffed one punt by Eric Gray, did recover that one, but lost the fumble, the muffed punt of Sterling Shepard. So the Giants, unable to address that need all season, just kept trotting Eric Gray out there, even though he never really did a whole lot of return stuff in college, a little bit here and there, and was really more primarily playing that running back position. We haven't seen Eric Gray much on the offensive side of the ball, but now with him going to the injured reserve for the short time being, the Giants needed some help on special teams and haven't been able to find their answer with any of these other guys. Adoree Jackson, you don't want back there on the punt return unit. I'm sure even just saying his name just then gave some of you PTSD war flashbacks to last season when he got injured on a punt return. And then, of course, like I said, they tried Sterling Shepard last week. That also didn't work out. So what are the New York Giants going to do with the punt return position? Well, they went ahead and got themselves a former All-Pro who we're going to go ahead and react to, dive into his stats, and break them down for you in today's episode. But before we dive into all that, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. Comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? And what are your thoughts on the Giants' new punt returner?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm doing pretty well. The Giants, I mean, they've done a lot of weird things over the years. I know you guys probably can agree with that. One of them being the failure to even put a competent kick returner back there. I really just don't understand it. Remember when we had David Wilson and the guy would return a kick and you just took off and you're like, wow, starting at the 35, 40-yard line every time was a pretty beneficial thing when your offense blows chunks, right? Like putting yourself in better field positions should be a priority before your offense even steps on the field, mainly because our offense can barely move the football, let alone score points. So, giving them an advantage seems like a best-case scenario, seems like an ideal scenario. And I'll tell you what, right now, Eric Gray was not doing that for us, and he never was going to do that for us. He was never a kick returner, never a punt returner. He looked uncomfortable back there the entire season leading up to when he muffed it, and then he was just put on IR with a calf injury. So, the Giants tried to put Sterling Shepard back there. He muffed a punt. We saw Darius Slayton back there. He had a couple of decent reps, but the Giants decided, okay, you know what, it's time to solve this issue. We had some options. Khalil Pimpleton stood out to me as a guy who could have made an impact there. But they went with Gunner Olszewski, and this is a player who has had some success in the past. Now, guys, I want to give you a little bit of information. He hasn't been so great lately. So, yes, he is a former All-Pro, but since then, he hasn't been very good. He played 2 games this year. He muffed a couple of punts, a couple of fumbles, and led him to being released. So this is a guy who's had experience, has had positive experiences in the NFL, and had some really good seasons with the New England Patriots. His best season came back in 2020, was the All-Pro season, 346 yards on punt returns, including a touchdown. He averaged 17.3 yards per return on 20 returns. So he was the best kick returner in the game in 2020. And then the next year, still pretty good, 11.9 yards per return. The average is below 10. Had 309 yards on 26 attempts. He was, once again, very, very, very good. Also, kick returner, very solid. So, but then 2022 came around, then he joined the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I'll tell you what, I kind of feel as though this may be a hit on the Pittsburgh Steelers special teams room instead of him as a kick returner himself. Yes, he fumbled a couple, which were definitely on him. But his average has dropped from almost 12 and over to 6.9 in 2022. And then this past 2 games in 2023 to 8. So you're looking at a massive drop-off here when he changed teams. I don't know if that's something to do with how the Patriots manage their special teams unit, or, comparably to the Steelers, or maybe he just dropped off a cliff at 26 years old. It seems kind of not realistic to me. Kind of seems like that's nonsense. I feel like something was happening, and that's probably what he told the Giants. He was like, look, this is what the Steelers were doing to me. I didn't agree with it. The blocking wasn't there. The blockers we had on the Gunners weren't doing their job. I don't know, whatever it might be. Or rather just the traditional blocking, not really the Gunners. But I feel as though right now this is an opportunity to try and turn back the clock for Gunner, kind of as a perfect special teams name as Gunner Olszewski. But, this is definitely a guy who has some success. And Honestly, I'm just looking for anything right now. The Giants, Eric Gray's been basically a net negative. He really hasn't returned anything at all. And the muff punts just kill us. Our defense can't hold up that often when you're dropped. We did enough last game against the Commanders to shoot ourselves in the foot to lose that game. We did enough to lose that game. Fortunately, our defense bailed us out again. Tyrod had a good game, didn't turn the ball over, but some tough moments. Saquon Barkley fumbles in the red zone, some muff punts, not ideal. But Anthony, when you're looking at Gunner, what do you think about him, and in terms of what the importance of returning kicks, returning punts, and putting your offense in good field position? I feel like that right now is paramount for the Giants. Give them a chance to even just let Graham Gano kick field goals, just extra points on the board. That goes a long way, and I feel like that extra yard or two football's a game of inches. Gunner may be able to help in that regard.
Definitely. Football is a game of inches, and listen, the Giants' special teams has been problematic for the past several seasons, I'd say. I know a lot of finger pointing and blame has been thrown into the direction of Thomas McGahee, the Giants' special teams coordinator, and probably for good reason. His units have not performed at a very high level consistently for several seasons now. But when you're looking at how the Giants' special teams played in the beginning of the season, I do think it's improved, right? They're not letting up blocked field goals anymore like they did in week 1. They've actually been getting in some opportunities and executing on some of those field goals. I still think that the long snapper, hold, and the kicker, that unit right there, those three are still playing at a high level. So I don't think that it's been all bad for the special teams, but obviously they've had problems with the return men. They haven't had a guy, a designated return specialist, and I think that's something that the Giants have been lacking probably for several seasons. If you think back, Alex, to when the Giants had Dwayne Harris, remember when they signed him to be their designated return specialist? He was a pretty good return man, and he was throughout his entire career across a multitude of teams. He joined the Giants. He actually made a lot of plays on offense as well. Him and Eli Manning used to connect on a number of passes, a few touchdowns. One against the Saints, if you all remember, when Eli Manning had like 6 touchdown passes or something crazy. So Dwayne Harris, that's kind of the value that you're hoping for. That's high-end value from a return specialist, but at least from the low-end value, what you're getting is hopefully a guy who is just capable of fielding the punt, making the right decision with the punt or the field goal, and not making any mistakes. A guy who keeps the football out of harm's way, keeps your team out of harm's way, and can add some yardage to your field positioning when possible. So that's what I'm hoping for with Gunner. I don't have all these high expectations for the guy. I don't think that he's going to go out there and score a punt return touchdown. If he does, that would be sick. But no, I'm not expecting him to go out there, put points on the board himself. But what the primary goal of the punt returner is to help the offense add points by putting them in a better position to score those points. So the Giants have lost the field position battle many times this season. And even when they have had good field positioning, though, Alex, to be fair, they have squandered many of those opportunities. But lately, it's been the Giants' defense setting the offense up with good field positioning through the way of turnovers. And the special teams has not been doing that. The special teams has been muffing punts where the Giants offense doesn't even get a chance to touch the ball, or just not making big plays with the punt returns, so on and so forth, right? Like the Giants special teams just hasn't been doing it, winning the field position battle for the New York Giants. So now what I'm hoping for here is a reliable punt returner who doesn't muff punts, doesn't fumble the ball. And I know, as you mentioned, Alex, he's had a couple of problems with that recently, but as long as those problems are by the wayside and he doesn't muff punts, doesn't fumble the ball, and helps the Giants just gain at least a few yards of field positioning each time he steps out on the field, then I think that it's a good signing, and I am pleased with it. So something to be happy about. Again, my expectations are not super high for Gunner, but I am surprised, Alex, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this. I'm surprised that it took the Giants this long to get a designated return specialist on the roster, because the way that they've been managing this position, they're like, okay, which skill position player can we just aimlessly throw out onto the field and hope that they figure it out, right? They're like, okay, let's throw Eric Gray out there just because we think that's a good way to develop this running back. Well, it wasn't. Now he's injured, and now you're not even going to get this rookie running back developed in the running game, which I was always confused by. I really don't like the management of Eric Gray so far this season. I thought that he should have been getting snaps in the backfield and getting opportunities to run, but that's kind of a tangent for another day. But then they throw Sterling Shepard out there, who has no punt return experience. Yes, he practices it, but he's got no in-game experience. Adoree Jackson fielded one several weeks ago. So how are you feeling about the way that the Giants have managed this position to this point, just throwing these playmakers out there kind of randomly? And are you seeing this as a step in the right direction, that now the Giants are addressing this need with a designated return specialist?
Of course, yeah. I'm happy they're at least putting someone in there that's not going to be like a liability. or at least we hope isn't going to be a liability, and also someone that isn't a starting cornerback. Like you mentioned, Adoree Jackson. Like, this is we should not be leveraging our most important players. Now, I'll argue that Adoree's probably not one of our most important players anymore. I mean, long term, he's probably not going to be here. Probably moves on. I think he's probably actually one of our most suitable trade candidates right now, in terms of his value and where the Giants are. I really liked what I saw from Trey Hawkins last week, and Cordell Flott's been playing well, and we all know Dante Banks is kicking ass. So, right now I'm kind of actually looking at this secondary and saying to myself, like, maybe we're better off moving Adoree Jackson for draft capital right now to a team that may be willing to take on the rest, probably not even his contract, really just giving him, you're paying the rest of his contract and you're just getting draft capital in return. So maybe that's something the Giants would consider, because those young guys are balling. Like, Hawkins look good. Banks look good. Cordell Flott looks good. I want to keep seeing them. Like, look, I like Adoree Jackson. I think he's a good dude. I have nothing against him. I think he's a good player. But we can objectively say that he's 90% not going to be on this team next year. So, with that being the case, I think developing our talent is the best case scenario, is what we should be strategizing toward, because that fuels the future. It doesn't hold us back. With that being said, I do believe that with this signing of Gunner Olszewski, this just gives us an opportunity to put the ball in better field position for the offense, but also doesn't risk some of our better talent. And look, Eric Gray, if he gets injured, like, it doesn't really impact the team. Of course, never want to see anyone injured, but like, his injury doesn't really impact the team because you have Saquon Barkley healthy. But at the same time, like, why is he being used in this position to begin with? Like, he's not a good punt returner. Like, he never has been. He never was. So that's why I question what the Giants do sometimes. That's why I asked, why not, if Sterling Shepard's not going to play, like, why wasn't Jamison Crowder kept to be our punt returner, or Cole Beasley? You know what I mean? Like, why, if they weren't even going to give him a chance? Like, Sterling Shepard, like, barely even sees the field now. I'm just curious. Like, I just don't really know. Or how about I mean, this is an easy one. How about Paris Campbell? Like, we barely see Paris Campbell even play. Why is he not taking kicks? Why is he not wasn't he a kick returner at one point? Why is he not fielding these punts? I don't really get it. Like, I just don't know what the logic is behind it. I don't know why. Maybe they just wanted to get Eric Gray involved because he's a rookie, and they were like, let's just make sure like he sees the field and gets comfortable. I don't know. Like, it's sometimes the logic escapes me when it comes to these the team's decision making. And that really is what it's always boiled down to with this team. Like, sometimes I'm like, what are we doing? And then other times I'm like, okay, like, I guess that makes sense. And last year, the Adoree Jackson thing, we were like, don't do this, he's going to get hurt. And then what do you know, the next week he gets hurt and misses like 5 games. So, we've been here before. I'm happy they signed a specialist that will specifically fill this role, and we don't have to risk other players or have liabilities in that position, because, we've gone down that road and it's bit us in the butt multiple times. So it's unfortunate, but that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there with the Giants. Don't put a starter back there, right? Like, don't put a player that's really valuable to your team and the success of your team back there on special teams, because it is a good way to get a player injured, putting them on special teams when they don't have that experience. Listen, those designated return specialists like a Gunner, like this guy that we're talking about today, they're used to being back there in that environment with everybody running after them. They know how to protect their bodies in that situation so they don't get injured. But other guys, like an Eric Gray, for example, he's not used to seeing an entire football team run after him on the field. He's used to getting the ball in the backfield and then getting through the middle of the line of scrimmage and finding 2 to 3 guys ready to dogpile him on a short range tackle, not guys with full heads of steam just sprinting right at him. And I think that was in his head a lot, causing some of these muffs. He wasn't getting his feet set underneath him while catching some of these punts. And I just think generally speaking, with those guys back there on the return, in the return roles, kick return and punt return, it's a daunting task. You've just got so many people flying at you full speed, and if you don't know how to protect your body in that situation, you are bound to get injured. I think we saw that with Adoree Jackson as well. We've seen it time and time again. But now with a guy like Gunner here, who's used to this, being in this environment and in this situation, you should expect him to protect his body, stay healthy, and at least give you something quality or at least average level on the return game for the rest of the season, which allows some of these other players like Sterling Shepard, Adoree Jackson, and the rest of them, allows them to stay healthy and not risk their health going out there trying to return any punts or kickoffs. So I do think that's a very important variable to keep in mind here. This is a move that should help keep a lot of the other New York Giants playmakers healthier for the rest of the season. And hopefully Gunner goes out there and gives us some quality snaps. If he returns a punt, I'll be up on my coffee table, slamming on my chest, screaming, hyped for him. Let's go, Gunner. That would be sick. But unlikely stuff. I think he's just going to be, your average normal return specialist. Field your punts, goes down after 5 yards, if that, and that's it. But that's better than what we've had back there. That's better than fumbling, muffing punts, and having just loads of inconsistency back there. So just providing some stability to this unit, I think, will be really crucial for the New York Giants special teams from here on out going forward. But that pretty much wraps this one up. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and comment your thoughts on the topic down below in the comment section. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, we will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.